Hello and welcome everyone in another episode of Researcher Celebrity. Today we have Kevin Joseph Dilip with us and a brief introduction of Kevin. He has done his bachelor's BTech in biotechnology from Karunia University, Coimbatore, and during this time he did his internship in Taiwan at Taiwan Education Experiencing Program at Asia Plus as an Asia Plus scholar, and then for masters he moved to Taiwan, attended National Donghua University as a Ministry of Education scholar, and did his masters in biotechnology with specialization in molecular virology. Currently he is a PhD student at Simp Impress Graduate School, which is a collaboration between University of Münster and MPI for molecular biomedicine. With this brief introduction, I'll say thank you so much, Kevin, for taking time out.
Absolutely.
So
It's a
we
pleasure to
start
be here.
absolutely. Thank you so much. We start these conversations by asking our celebrities that how and when you decided that you want to become a researcher.
Mm, for me, I think it started on quite early, and I would attribute the whole thing to my experience in Karunya. Um, it's just mostly the faculty there are from very different fields, and they were sort of inspiring in many ways. And I was assigned a mentor for my project during my third year, and he was the one who sort of taught me all about research and what kind of ways that you could do it and how you can attain it. He himself was a PhD student in Taiwan. Um, that's where he met his wife, got married, and after that he moved to Karunia, India, where he still lives. Um, and he was the one who mostly just we used to spend multiple evenings talking about science, and that's actually where I got my first project from, which I was looking at apoptosis and necrosis in brine shrimp. So we were doing this, studying this DNA fragmentation that happens very differently in both these ways. And right after that was when he invited his PhD mentors to Karunya for a conference. And that's where I met my PI, who I worked with for the next 4 years. Mm.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you said that within like at early stages of your bachelor's, you
Hmm.
knew that you want to do a PhD, probably.
Yes. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if you can tell something about the program, the internship you did,
Hmm.
and probably most of our young researchers who are
Hmm.
enthusiastic and doing research in India, if
Hmm.
they can be benefited of that program.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not very special, or rather, it's not just very special to Taiwan itself. A lot of countries have this education experience program. Just for Taiwan, it was TEEP at Asia Plus, which stands for Taiwan Education Experience Program at Asia Plus. Um, so what they do is, so it kind of works like this. So every PI there in Taiwan has a chance to apply to TEEP for funding to further some of their current research endeavors. And they would just have to register with the government, say what project they're recruiting for, and the government will fund for that a small amount of money, which would be able to fund a foreign international student to go to their lab, stay there for about 6 months. That's the maximum duration that you can stay. The minimum is 1 month. Um, and you do some research, some science there, and then you get to move back to India. Um, so there's a website very special to that, where every year it gets updated with many lists of open positions that any of our students can apply to. So there, what really matters is how you approach your PI, because nobody is looking at your background there, but rather just your research interest. Um, so you will find the contact information for the PI and the office. So you just have to write them an email saying, yes, I really like your project. I have some knowledge in here. Or if you feel like you like a project, but you think you lack the knowledge, you can still mention it to them, and they are very open about it because it is an education experience program.
Mhm,
Nobody expects you to come there with a whole set of skills. And that is
mhm.
how I got in. And I
Mhm.
think that's a really good starting point for our people. It's not
Nice.
very widely known, but
Hmm.
I wish it was.
Nice, nice. So, how does that, like that experience of the during the internship,
Mhm.
have kind of made you a little bit more specialized that what you will be doing for your masters and then later on in PhD?
Mm, yeah, so when I moved there, at least in my case, I had a lot of freedom to choose what I wanted to work on. But I took the easy way out and chose what the lab was really strong at. Um, and mostly, they taught me a lot of new techniques that I was not exposed to. Of course, I was strong in theory because Karunya was able to provide that. But with the practical experience, you lack a lot of it in most institutes. So that's where they were strong, experimental biology. And then the question just stuck because it had a lot of impact, at least for me. So that's where I started working. There were a lot of help, and it was just really inspiring because, when you're a part of an education experience program, nobody expects you to write a really good thesis. There is no expectation of, um, delivering something.
Hmm.
You just have a time point to experience education and learn for yourself what you like doing best. And I think that's what I did. It took me a while. It took me 2 months or so to settle down and really get into this research. But then once I got into it, I realized I really liked it. So I did my best there.
Okay, so you mentioned about the thesis. You
Hmm.
did a thesis on your internship, correct?
Hmm.
Okay, so comparing this like 6 month research internship and then your masters
Hmm.
in there,
Hmm.
the amount of what if we can say that you were already aware of the lab culture, the PI who
Hmm.
you joined for the masters lately,
Hmm.
what were the things which made you uh, stay with the same PI for your masters?
Mm, great question. So there were more than one factors, of course.
Mhm.
One was that she was extremely kind, out of the lab. But I really liked the fact that she was very critical inside the lab when it came to work and even the things that you show. She used to be really good at pointing many different things that you could learn a million things from. Like you show her one Western blot and she comes out with 10 or 15 interpretations of it, which you would then have to test later. And that's something that I really liked. And second part was the lab worked with fundamental biology, which I have always been interested in. Um, and in that case, trying to understand how biology works and hopefully being able to translate it in the future was what sort of kept me there and sort of
So
made me want to go back.
So it's like your interests were aligning with the lab research focus, and then the
Yes.
PI being more compassionate, that being critical inside the lab and outside the lab more kind. These were the things which kept you going on for your masters in there.
Yes. It's
So
just
this,
it's also the fact that I could see myself grow at an
Mhm,
exponential rate when you compare yourself over a few
mhm.
months or so. Um,
Nice.
so that was something that really kept me going. Mm.
Absolutely. No, I think growth is one of the things because at this stage, you are just trying to get a skill set which you will be using for your next step. So, for all the audience who are considering or already are doing PhD in India,
Mm.
so if you have this opportunity to go and experience these education programs in different countries, as Kevin mentioned, it is a good idea always to have because this increases your work area. Also, sometimes what is more interesting is the collaboration that during that short period of time for internship, as Kevin went there and then ended up doing masters in there too. So these are the things which trains you for your future next step, and also it helps to help your peers because as now all the experience which Kevin had, now he's sharing, and then probably some of you, after listening to this, now are more aware of these programs and can get benefited for them. So this is also part of the building the community too. So Kevin, internship done,
Mm,
masters going or sailing through well.
mm,
Now PhD in Max Planck.
mm.
How did that came first, and what were the driving thoughts behind it?
So I did my master's during COVID. So I was stuck in Taiwan. So um, the world was still revolving there. There was no lockdown. But then after my master's was done, um, I always had this question in my mind, do I really want to go for a PhD? I never could find an answer to it immediately right after. So I moved back to India, and then I took up a job as a project associate at NCBS, Bangalore. And I worked there for 2 years. I had a great time there. Um, I was trying to explore other kinds of research. This time I was working on bacteria, bacterial membranes. But again, that question was always there in the back of my mind. Do I really want to do a PhD? Because to me, it felt like a really long commitment. And I wanted to make sure that I was ready for it by the time I went. So something clicked after 1 year, 1.5 years of being in that research enriched area. You listen to many talks from people, and then you get to know their experiences from that. And I've kept feeling like perhaps I want to have that experience as well. So I just started applying 1.5 years later. And then uh, I think I applied to 4 places, really calculated it down, turned it down to what I want to do. Looked for labs. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it in the end. And then so the way that MPI recruits is a little different. So usually you have online interviews, but in my case, they invited me here to Münster to attend interviews in person. And then I met my PI and it just clicked. So um, I would say that's how it happened. It was, to me, it was not the institute or rather the name tag, because to me, this is something that my PI from my master's days just said. There is no bad science and there is no good science.
Mhm.
Wherever you are, you can still contribute to science. If you don't have the resources, you will have to develop yourself in a way that you attain those resources, and in a way that you contribute to your own self-growth and you also contribute to your lab. That was something that always stuck with me. But to me, solely, this was mostly because of my PI, how he was as a person. That was the first thing that I looked for. And second, how was the lab? I had a chance to really personally meet all the lab members, talk to them. And I would say I really like their research as well. So I would put both of it together. I liked the lab and they also liked their research. So to me, it was a clear choice. So I just went with it.
Nice. So this is one of the things which I think for most of us who are considering to pursue PhD should
Mm,
be like as you took your own sweet time. We always try to enforce this multiple times that until you are more than 100% sure for a PhD commitment, because it is not only the number of years but the number of hours of some of those pain which we are now going to talk,
mm,
that if you are ready for that, then only please enter in there. Or if this actually is research is the thing which makes you happy, because at the end of the day, happiness is what matters the most after some of those failed experiments. So now coming to the all good parts, like everything is now when you are here settled, how is the research going or the PhD?
yeah. So I noticed a lot of differences. I might have a lot to share here. Um, so um, I felt like I've experienced research in many different places in many different cultures, starting with Karunya, which was a technical institute, but of course we had our own experimental labs there. Um, and then moving to Taiwan, where it was more experimental research, or rather completely experimental. Um, so looking at it, comparing cultures, I would say There is so there was this one question that my PI asked a couple of weeks back. Comparing to your experience in Taiwan, do you think you are more productive here or more productive there? And it kind of made me think a lot, because the research culture there is different. We have a strict hierarchy system there, um, and in Germany you don't, because you treat your PhD more like a job, or Germans do. Um, so I would say there is pros and cons, and I sort of this whole productivity balances itself out. In Taiwan, I spent really long hours in the lab, morning till night, trying many different things. But here, doing a PhD in Germany is much, much different. Um, because first of all, most of the programs here are structured, so you know what question you're asking, or rather what question your PhD entails. And you have many different approaches that are really tailored to you. That's what I see in most labs. My lab is not like that, and that's something that I really like. Um, uh, it's just also the fact that the graduate school took care of most of the things. In fact, I think it was one of the more well-designed, thought out recruitments that I have ever had. Um, I just got a checklist, which I had to fill out to get a visa, flights booked. The first day I was here, all the refund forms were given to me to process. Um, Starting from there, it was a very different experience. And then research-wise, well, let's just say people are very different. Their outlook on research is very different here. And again, we are united by the whole, um, uh, the way that we really like research, or we approach research, I would say. Um, but then I can't think of how else to put it. Would you rather have a more specific
Yeah,
question?
so now that's what we are now getting into that. So when a person, like let's say any country, when they are applying for PhDs or postdocs outside their mother country, let's
Mhm.
say keep it for now, you have experienced, you are born and brought up in India, moved to Taiwan for your masters, now for PhD in Germany. There are certain things which people call as cultural shocks. You have experienced in two of them.
Mhm.
Which one was the strongest and why? And based on your experience, then how you can suggest that the next, generation researchers, when they're moving out, they should be more prepared.
Mm, well, I would say start with sort of developing your ability to filter out people that look for or try to do the best for you.
Hmm.
Um, that might not always be the most comfortable option. You might meet a professor today who would tell you all these great things, but towards the end, it might be very different from how you expect it to be. On the other hand, you might hear very uncomfortable questions, or questions that could not be answered, but then in the end, it might just be the best thing that could ever happen to you. Um,
Hmm.
in that regard, I really think we should learn how to judge a person and the environment, how we would really like it. And that is where your international experience really, really comes into focus, because you have met many different people, you're exposed to more cultures, you've seen the good sides and the bad sides, you have more friends, they come from many different places as well. Um,
Hmm.
so it just really tells you what are the green flags and what are the red flags that you should be looking for. In
Yes.
my case, it sort of helped me make a checklist
Hmm.
for myself, to see what I valued the most. And it
Hmm.
was very easy, because when you start applying later, you already have a checklist that you want to tick off, and you see which lab or which environment ticks off most of it, and you just
Hmm.
choose. Uh,
Nice. That's a great way to having this checklist ready before committing to PhD. That's a good way. And we'll say to all the audience here that, as Kevin mentioned, that it is very important that you make that checklist for yourself, not for the institute, but for you, that what are your priorities, what are the things which you want to pursue and want to filter out some of them. That is a good start. So when you also mentioned about setting up the expectations, like the PI and you, when you went for your first visit, when they invited you for the interview here, what was the conversation which you can share with the audience here, and then how they should navigate it to?
Mm, well, I would sort of start with saying body language matters a lot. Um,
Mhm.
the way you approach matters a lot. Um, and then you should always have a clear idea of what you really want to do or what you would like to do before you get into it. Because most PIs that I see here are really technical and um, they would really like to have scientific conversations with you. In my case, my current PI and I, we mostly talked about how the lab studies or their approach to studying this plasma membrane proteins. Um, and that's what they were really strong in. In that case, I knew a bit about it because I had already worked with bacterial membranes. So it was easy for me to relate, and we could sort of put together a few things. What I work on now, it does not relate to much of proteins at all, but that's a different story because once you get into a PhD, your experiment and your outlook decides where you go. It's not the structure of the program or anything. Um, so that was how it was for me. Then I would also say that the first contact that you make with someone really, really matters. So one thing that I did here was when you're here for an interview, you get to meet multiple PIs, and finally you get to choose who you want to work with. And there were two people that I was a bit conflicted about. So I came back home and I wrote each of them an email. And from the way that they replied to my email, for me, the choice was very clear.
Oh,
So it's
nice.
the small things, it's the little things,
Hmm.
I would say. So, and then of course, before I made my choice, I wrote back and forth.
Hmm.
We talked a little, even when we couldn't meet in person, during the
Hmm.
interviews. But towards the end, it was a clear choice for me.
Absolutely. No, very important part. Like if that, so you mentioned that the research project has been changed, like
Mm.
moved a little bit.
Yes.
So based on your experience, what
Mhm.
you can tell the others who are in that dilemma right now, that initial proposal was different, and then now they are pursuing something totally different.
Yes. Um, so from what I understand, of course, your lab has written a project and you're supposed to adhere to it. But then sometimes what happens is um, you could call this luck, but you could also call it not luck because the more people that put their thought process into it, the stronger the hypothesis and the more likely that it works out in the end. Um, and then where the student really should shine is to be able to differentiate between what is doable and what is not doable. And what is cool is not cool doesn't really matter in the end. In the end, to me, it felt like every kind of science that people do is cool enough. Um, so my starting project was very different. So it had a very different title as well. So I was trying to look at um, plasma membrane proteins and how they affect lipids around them. That was the idea. But then when I came here, my lab works in this way where, of course, there's a lot of input from the lab members, but they expect us to drive the project on forward, and that's how I would have it. I wouldn't have it anywhere else because that's how I really like it. I like to make decisions for myself too and try to talk to people about them. Um, so now it's completely changed where I study sterols instead and how sterols affect lipids around them. And in this regard, it was a bit of a task for me because I was able to tell myself that I could expend my first year trying to develop tools to visualize these sterols. And if I am successful, only if I'm successful, would I continue working with it in my second year? So I recently had a TAC, thesis advisory committee meeting with all of my members, and it felt like they were happy with it. But before they were happy with it, I felt like I was happy with it and I could take the next
Mhm.
step forward. So we all unanimously decided that yes, this is the way to move on. Um,
That's
but
very
then,
important.
yeah, I would say that the research doesn't ever concern one person, and that it concerns
Hmm.
a lot. And the more you ask for help, the more you get. Because I
Absolutely.
haven't met even one researcher who would say, I'm sorry, I cannot help you. They would definitely say, I'm sorry, I cannot find the time to talk to you.
Hmm.
Perhaps we could reschedule it for a later time. But then I haven't met even one that said, just a, no, I cannot help you. Bye.
That
Never.
is so true. And this brings us to the one of the important topics whenever it comes for seeking the help or providing them, both ways, because what is now the real use of technology, that it's not like the people who you are near only you can ask for help.
Mhm.
You can write emails globally, and that, as you mentioned, they might have to, you know, carve the path according to the mutual timings and whatnot all. But there are people who are ready to help you.
Absolutely.
One another thing which we always say, that you can only get help if you ask for it. If you're just thinking about it, nobody is there who can read your mind and then can help you. You have to ask for it. And sometimes you have to see, like some of your peers, if they are struggling, whatever you can afford, like offer them, and then based on the timing, how much you can contribute to that.
Yes.
And this also helps in lowering down the anxiety, the or especially whenever if something is not working, then the kind of depression which, peaks into the brain because you are not asking for help or seeking. So has anything happened to you in whatever research experience you have gained till now?
Absolutely. I would say that I'm probably one that asks for help more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in fact, even for this PhD interview that I attended for Sim Impress program, we had to present a poster and give a talk for 5 minutes, and I probably would have gotten about 40 different people from NCBS to go through it and give me their views. Um,
Nice.
it was a 3 month long process where I was meeting multiple people every day and trying to practice. It involved both my undergrad PI and my master's PI as well. They both listened to my talk that I was going to deliver in Germany before I did it, and they had very critical points to add. So, uh, like I said, it's never a one person victory. It is always more than that. And that is where asking around really helps, because by asking people, what you're doing is not just helping yourself, you're also giving them the opportunity to know that they could ask around, because
Mm-hmm.
you're more
Absolutely.
comfortable helping after being asked than not. Um,
Yeah, absolutely true. And this is also one of the things which we say, that if you have done your homework completely or well done, it shows whenever you are either presenting or for appearing for an interview, the person on the other side can feel it, that you have done whatever was required for this. And sometimes, as to start with, going back when Kevin mentioned that if you are applying for an education experience program, they do not expect that you come up with a project. The only thing which they want to see is the attitude, the interest you are showing them, that okay, I'm interested in either in a project or kind of skill set or whatnot. Because if you are very vague, it is difficult for the person to pick you for any role. And this is, as Kevin mentioned, like talking to 40 people for before an interview when you're presenting a 5 minute talk. It sounds like a lot, but this is what nails it down, and then how it ensures that if you really want to do something, till how far you can walk for that, and then how well you can prepare yourself. So, Kevin, now changing the experiments, seeking for help, what do you think is more important for a PhD student to maintain this balance of, uh, okay, let's say for now, work life balance?
mhm.
What is the most important part, how one should navigate it through, or your way which worked the best for you?
Um, so this might it seemed like a dream, but then that's why I really like my current lab, to be honest. Um, so you see, in my lab, and the way that we approach science at the moment, there is no work. I don't have to actively maintain a work-life balance. We have all the freedom to go in whenever. We have freedom to deliver. The one thing, or rather, the one checkpoint that we have at the moment is during the lab meeting, do you have stuff to show? If you don't, do you have a valid enough reason to not show it? And if you say that, yes, I tried this, my experiment didn't work, people are okay with it. But if you constantly say, I have not done anything for 3 weeks or so, of course, people would motivate you to do a bit more. Um, so in that regard, I feel like I don't work at all because I do something that I really like, and I wake up every morning thinking, yeah, I have this really fun experiment to do. I can't wait to see what results it gives. So let's just go ahead and try it. I wouldn't say I'm the guy that stays in the lab all the time, but then I would say I'm the guy that's there when I need to be.
Yes.
But then it doesn't mean that I push away life or anything like that. And I'm always around to talk to my family, my friends, stuff like that. But then I do think I just spend majority of my life, my time there. Um, so that's about it. Of course, a lot of people might not have that liberty, and I didn't have that liberty during my master's because,
Mhm.
I mean, I kind of did, but then I was expected to be there early in the morning, not because of the PI, but the culture demanded it. Because in a hierarchical system, at least in Taiwan, the easiest way to put it would be you should be a researcher who comes into the lab before your PI does, and be a researcher who leaves the lab after your PI does. And that's something
And
that's
that,
expected throughout, right?
absolutely.
A lot of people can relate to that. And in that regard, yes, you just have to adapt yourself. And that is where I think all of this external experiences really comes into play because then you could, you're much equipped to make a better choice um, towards your.
Absolutely. And also one of the things like which comes in this like making these decisions like where you want to pursue your PhD, like there are conversations we had with our researcher celebrities. Some
Mhm.
of them like say exactly as you said that there is no work-life balance because their work is what they enjoy the most, and for them it is just life everywhere. They are like, I'm getting paid for what I really like to do or enjoy. So that is one perspective. Others are like, okay, I want to have clear boundaries between my work and life, and then how to prioritize things. As also you said that you are in the lab when you are supposed to be, like when your work need you to be there at 2 a.m. sometimes you have to be there, and vice versa. But still, on a whole, people say that the work life balance in Europe is better than so many other places.
Mhm.
And in United Nation, like let's say United States, it is more about the driving force that you always have to be on your toes, and you don't have that leverage of having those. So these are the things which I think the for the students who are considering to move out from India for their PhDs, you see that what is your driving force. Like you need, like what are your priorities, what you want to do with your PhD, because that is one of the questions which we try to throw at all of our researchers, that what is the driving force that you need. You are doing your PhD, but what is the final product, what you want to do with it? So now I'll ask the same question to you, Kevin. What do you want to do with your PhD?
Um, Simply to put, I would really like to learn as much as I can and give back to the lab that gave me the opportunity to be a student in the first place, and then move on to a postdoc. Because from the way that I see it, a PhD is a degree, and you really don't need nature papers or you don't have to set your expectations too high. You just do the things that you really like, and sometimes it just works out. Um, you should also as I mentioned earlier, be a good idea to know what you really like to do and find out which field has the most demand. For example, for me, I know for a fact that lipids in general are high in demand right now. People with experience doing lipidomics or all the stuff like that, it's easier for people to find out. But then this would change. 2 years down the line, I can not tell you that it's true anymore. It really depends on how fast the field grows. So
Hmm.
just try to adapt in that regard. But for me, later, I would really like to stay in lipids, do a bit more. So now I work with yeast. For example, for my postdoc, I would want to move into mammalian system or in vivo system if there ever need be. Um, and then eventually have my own lab somewhere. That is my goal. I don't have an institute or a country in mind at the moment, but I just tell this to all the people around me when they ask me what I want to do. I just go where the wind takes me.
Absolutely. No, but having that clear mindset that you want to become a PI at one point of time, have your own lab, and then give back to the society, the research, and yeah, that's a good way to do. And adaptability you mentioned is one of those important part which shows that your open-mindedness and your adaptable nature is what is going to take you far wherever you really want to go in research,
Mhm.
because as you said there are turns which are unexpected. The fast paced research, like this, I think the era which we are in now is probably the fastest growing research. It changes every day. Something was a hot cake 10 days ago and now it has been changed completely because there is a novel finding in there. That shows that if you are always open for and adaptable, that whatever is the need, and for all of that, if we sum it up, is like the skill set what is required. Science
Mhm.
is not experiments only. Science is how you interpret them, and as Kevin mentioned, that you might have 10 different ways how you interpret it. So Kevin, last one thing if I want to ask you, that till now, if you say that you have not had very challenging or hard time in your research.
Of course, I did. There were certain parts where I was really wondering if I was ever fit to do research or not.
Okay.
But then that's where I think growth happens because you see, um, comfort will never take you far. The
Mhm.
discomfort is what really gives you perspective. And that's something that people should be okay with. Of course, you fall down and your ego head gets hurt, or you physically get hurt as well sometimes. And
Mhm.
then the question still comes down to, do you still have the heart to get back up and go and confront what bothers you? Um, and I think in a way that kind of sums up research because I could tell you that I would have done 10 experiments in the past 1 week and probably one was a success.
Mhm.
But sometimes what happens is you do two experiments a week and two of them are a grand success. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Nice.
that whole uh, probability, the way you navigate science, really, really matters. But if I could leave everyone with one instance
Mhm.
in this whole thing. Um, so I have a friend, a dear friend who is a postdoc at one of nicer labs in Taiwan. And he told me one thing one day. So his PI is known to be a bit demanding, to always want to have kind of positive results. So what he does is they have weekly lab meetings. So like I mentioned, experiments don't work all the time. So what you do is you keep doing experiments. You keep collecting the successes and the failures. But when you have a good week, when all of your experiments work, don't show everything at the same time, right? You adapt based on what your lab requires and how your atmosphere is. But in the end, what really matters is you're happy doing what you want to do.
Mhm.
And then you keep the people around you happy with what you're doing eventually. And there is no clear equation to that. But you will figure it out in the long run. And all of these experiences that I mentioned will definitely help you do that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kevin, for taking time out for this conversation and sharing your experiences. To all the audience, will say if you want to connect to Kevin, you can directly connect to him. If you want STEM for Society to help you to connect with our researcher celebrities, we are there to help you. And you just have to write it to us, and then we are there to support you. With this, we'll say thank you so much, Kevin.
Most welcome. It was a great experience. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
Stay tuned for everyone else. Stay tuned for another episode of Researcher Celebrity.